This video we're going to take an overview look at the different ways that thinking particles can interact with max meshes and nodes. And then we're also going to take a look at how we can take TP's groups and treat them as max nodes and meshes so that we can modify them. Let's go ahead and take a look. We've got several rules here. We've got dynamic set for borning particles. Here, this first one, matter wave born. We're just going to born some red particles on this plane and have them sit there. We're going to modify them later. We've got a born position. It's going to give birth to some green particles right here. We're going to use those to shoot up, and they're going to hit these yellow particles up here and deform that sphere. Then we've got an others rule, and here in the others we've got the object particle generator. This allows us to pick a scene object, a mesh, and it's going to turn that into a blue particle, and then our tracking is set to object particle, which is going to say whatever this source object does, I want the object to affect the particle. So if the source object, which is this purple sphere here, he's got a bunch of rotation and scaling keys, and he's also bound to a path. So as he moves around that path, whatever his movement is, whatever his scaling keys are, whatever his animated modifier, this noise modifier, all of that's going to affect the particle because of object particle. And of course we have instant shape turned on so that the blue particle actually gets the shape information from that sphere. We've also got vertex particle here. This takes an object, a mesh, and it's going to create a particle at every vertex. And then we've got track particle to vertex turned on. And what this does is whatever happens to these yellow particles is going to update that source object mesh and affect his vertices. So this is a great way to kind of create soft bodies or deforming meshes. And let's take a look. We've got a forces for rule that's going to affect these yellow particles. This basically just has a force operator here that pulls. It's going to pull them down to simulate gravity, kind of slow. The rest of these are all disabled right now. And then we've got a repulsion bounce. Repulsion bounce is going to happen between the green particles and the yellow particles whenever they're within 5 units of each other. So as these green particles fly up, they're going to come close to these yellow particles, cause a repulsion bounce to happen. It's going to simulate kind of a fast and optimized collision between the two, and that's going to go ahead and affect those yellow particles, and that's going to affect the vertices of that source object. We've got a rule called IfFar then go to. This basically says, okay, yellow particles, if you get too far away from this node here, and this node has this point 0.01 picked, if the yellow particles are too far from the node, then use this bring to go ahead and pull them back into that. The rule right now actually has the output, so it says if I'm within 0 and 40, use that output as a true, but we're going to invert it. So whenever he's not within 0 and 40, go ahead and bring him back into there. So if he gets further away than between 0 and 40. Okay, and then we've got a PramBlock. PramBlock we have used on this cylinder 01 out here. Let's go ahead and scrub that guy to get him back updated. And PramBlock is a great operator for interacting with max meshes because it allows us to pick the object, and then we can expose pretty much everything about that object. All of his transform keys, rotation scale, as well as we have access to his modifiers. So in our case what we've done is we've exposed the bend modifier that's applied to him. It's got a bend modifier right here, and we've exposed the angle, and we use it as an input so that we can actually control that angle with TP data. If we wanted to do things like maybe take his position and add an output, this would allow us to use this object's output position and pass this along to other TP operators and drive TP data. So PramBlock is great anytime you need to access max nodes or scene nodes and have it modify data, whether you're modifying that object's data or using it to pass data into TP. And what all we're doing with this angle is we've got a timer 01 set up to go from 0 to 180 in 50 frames, and then go from 180 to negative 180 in 100 frames, and then negative 180 to 0 in 80 frames. And that's basically just going to modify that angle and have him kind of bounce back and forth and go back to the middle. And then last but not least, we've got an export operator. Export operator is going to affect the green particles being born here in the middle, and we're going to just take a look at the different settings and talk about what happens when we export those. So let's just go ahead and we'll play this scenario. It's important to know we've got real-time turned off, and this will allow TP to play every frame and result in the smoothest motion. And we're going to go ahead and we can see that cylinder we just talked about with the PramBlock being his angle being modified. We can see these yellow particles hitting, colliding with the green particles and deforming his mesh. That's the vertex particle. And then we can see this blue particle kind of waving and changing and matching the deformation, the position on the path constraint as his source object. Let's just go ahead and take a look. Let's actually zoom in on the vertex to particle. That's one of the more interesting ones. As these green guys come close, they smash into those yellow particles and deform that original object mesh. So that is really one of the powerful things about vertex to particle. Then you can see that rule. Actually, we'll back up. You can see it better in this viewport. There's the rule IfFar then go to. All that happens there is as soon as these guys get pushed far enough away, it's going to pull that yellow object back toward that node. We can see them getting knocked around there, and then right around in here he gets too far, and you can see he changes direction and heads back that direction. Okay, so pretty simple. We've got those red particles, all these other particles happening. Before we modify TP groups as objects, we're going to take a look at the export operator. Remember, this is going to take all the green particles and it's going to export them, turn them into actual max nodes, one node each with his own position, rotation, and scale keys. We're going to use quality at 100. I highly recommend always using 100 just because it's going to match the exact position, rotation, and scale of the object. And we've got this organized a little different. As soon as you hit export here, what it's going to do is it's going to create a dummy helper, a null at the origin, and it's going to take all of these objects it creates and make them children of that null. We also have a layer called TP export that we've created. We're just going to use that so that and made it the current layer, so it's going to create all those objects under there. We'll go ahead and hit export, and you'll see that it's creating all these extra colored wireframes, and you can kind of see the double mesh appear here in the viewport. And so what's happening is it's creating a max node, an actual unique object for each particle, and you can see them here during the export process, how they're being born. And here in a second we'll take a look at the nuances of what happens there.